Hey guys, Kelli Stewart here, back in the rainy Northwest, and wanted to do a live stream and talk for a minute, just briefly about the verdict today, but mainly wanted to address some messages I've been getting this morning, where apparently some trolls out there are saying something about jury tampering. So I just wanted to address that. I talked to John about it and he asked me to go ahead and do a quick video. I haven't seen the comments specifically from today, but apparently there's some concern out there that Brand, Thornton, or John had actually had some communication with some of the jurors, and that maybe jury tampering had gone on. So just to put a few people's minds at ease, whoever it is that's really upset about this, that did not happen. The other day John Lamb did a video, and in it Brand came on and he was sharing how a few of the alternate jurors, is what he called them, had come down and had either spoken to them or made some comments to them or taken their picture. I don't even know exactly what they did, but they were present. And this got some people out there who are not supporters upset, and caused them to start pursuing something regarding jury tampering. And so the truth behind that is that while Brand called them alternate jurors, they were actually jurors who had not been chosen for the jury. So they weren't any of the jury members who had been sitting in this trial for the last 8 weeks. So for everybody apparently who's been trying to figure out how to get somebody on jury tampering, everything at the courthouse is recorded outside. So I'm sure, you know, if you guys search far and wide through 8 weeks of video, I'm sure you'll be able to find those people that you're looking for, and you'll realize that they were not anybody on the current jury. So I hope that puts some of the trolls at ease. I hope they can then focus on maybe something else, being productive. Brand misspoke. He said alternate jurors when what he was actually referring to was people who did not even make it on they were in the jury pool, but they did not get chosen to actually go in and be a part of this trial. So there was a few bits of confusion about some of the charges, and so I just thought I'd answer a few questions that I know. Two, that while yes, it's very good that nobody was found guilty outside of the charges against Greg Burleson and the 2 charges against Todd, that to remind everybody that from a legal standpoint, what some of the attorneys have said is that this is not a win in the courts today, that justice was not served. That from a legal standpoint, yes, Gavin, it's a hung jury. They're actually, somebody was calling it a mistrial on a video a few minutes ago, and I'm not understanding why it's a mistrial, but mistrial hung jury. So why this is not a good thing. The only thing that happened in this trial is that men were found guilty. So the hung jury really doesn't do anything to help anybody. They have to go to trial again. The other thing to think about that one of the attorneys shared with me that helped to kind of open my eyes. Let's see. No, nobody was found not guilty, Joe. There was not one not guilty verdict. It was hung jury, and then Greg Burleson was found guilty on 8 of the 10 counts, and Todd Engel was found guilty on 2 of his 10 counts. So let's see. The damning part about the charges that they were found guilty on is that we have 2 individuals who were found guilty of the interstate commerce extortion charge. So what that means is that they crossed state lines. Todd Engel crossed state lines to commit a crime. And so while some of you are saying, okay, this is good because it's a small charge, what you have to realize is that that means the government proved guilt, that a crime was committed. And we have 2 more trials coming up, and now this whole new trial coming up for these guys. So it's actually not a good thing. It doesn't mean that justice was served. It is not. I mean, we had a few people who didn't feel like the prosecution did their job of proving guilt on all of the guys, but they did feel like they proved guilt, that Todd Engel came into the state to commit a crime. That's not a good thing, and that shows that the truth was not told in this courtroom. We all know that the truth was not told in the courtroom. In the courtroom itself, when you enter, there's a quote up there that talks about the jury process in America and why it's such a treasured process, and it talks about the witnesses speak, the jury hears the truth, and then they deliberate and justice is served. But we know in this situation, for 5 weeks, the prosecution had the stand, and the defense had the stand in the end for like 3 days. They ended up calling 3 witnesses total. One ended up being somewhat of a hostile witness. So 2 witnesses total for all 6 of these guys took the stand. That's not justice. That's not getting to call witnesses in your defense. So, you know, there's a whole bigger picture here that we need to look at. Even if every one of them were found not guilty, they've still endured the last 8 weeks of a lack of due process being served in these courtrooms. So, you know, they've spent 14 months in jail, denied bail. They didn't get to call witnesses in their defense. Their defense attorneys were likely scared of them, is my personal opinion, that they probably didn't truly believe their defendants to be innocent, which would explain why they didn't fight for them so hard. And another thing to keep in mind is that each one of these law firms that gets called on to represent somebody on behalf of the defense side, they're each collecting like $1 million for these trials. So we need to keep that in mind, that this law firm, when they come forth, John Lamb was saying that in one of the closing arguments, one of the attorneys actually said, while I am here to represent my client, my first duty is as an officer of this court. So we need to remember that when these guys are being paid, you know, potentially more than $1 million, each one of their law firms to represent these guys, they're walking on eggshells. They don't want to lose the funding. 2, I don't truly believe that these defense attorneys believed the innocence of their clients. And if they did, then they have an integrity issue because they didn't fight as though they believed in the innocence of their clients. I personally heard a few of the comments when I was down there from the attorneys that were very disappointing. One of them was in one of the lunch areas eating, and he looked at the other attorney and said, "This is the effing trial that goes on and on and on and won't end." This is one of the defense attorneys said this. And then another one said, right after the first closing arguments of the prosecution, he looked at one of the other attorneys, and I won't say their names, but he looked at one of the other attorneys and he said, "We just effing lost the case." So, I mean, this is the attitude of these guys that are representing men who are potentially looking at 95 years in prison. As far as Greg Burleson goes, and I'm not going to make this long, I'm going to actually wrap this up. I wanted to read something for anybody who believes in the scriptures or the Bible. I'm not a Mormon, but I am a born-again Christian. Regarding Greg Burleson, was justice served? He's looking at life in prison right now. So I personally don't feel like justice was served. We all know Hillary Clinton just ran for presidency when she should have been behind bars. And so to think that justice was served because Greg Burleson was a past informant, or even possibly still trying to get his job back as an informant when he made all of his hostile comments, I don't agree that justice was served on his behalf. Even though he made the Longbow production video, and he did say some very inflammatory things that I would never stand with. I would never stand with a man who says, you know, "I hope we leave here with full body bags," is what he said. I wouldn't personally stand with somebody who is speaking that way because I believe that the rest of the people went there to the Bundy Ranch to protect life and make sure life was not taken, not to actually hope that somebody's life would be lost. However, the video that he made all those damning comments was made after the stand up. So was he just puffing up? Was he just acting tougher than he was? I don't know, because I don't know him and I don't know what's in Greg Burleson's heart. I don't know if he truly went there to bring harm to officers, but he was actually found guilty of assault on a federal officer. How is that possible? How is that possible? How did he truly assault a federal officer? That's a fake charge. He was found guilty on so many counts that all overlapped each other that they within themselves should have been considered double jeopardy. So I don't feel like justice was served there. But I'm going to go ahead and read this real quick, and it's my belief as to why Greg Burleson was found guilty on all of his accounts. So I'm going to read from Matthew chapter 12. Jesus is speaking to the Pharisees. The Pharisees in a lot of ways are kind of like our trolls now, where they, some of them pretend to be believers and to be Christ followers, but then they come and spew lies at the ones who are truly in good heart and good motives trying to support these good Americans. And so that's what was happening. And the Pharisees were saying, no wonder Jesus can cast out demons. He gets his power from Satan. And Jesus replied a few things, and then he said, a tree is identified by its fruit. If a tree is good, its fruit will be good. If a tree is bad, its fruit will be bad. You brood of snakes, how could evil men like you speak what is good and right? For whatever is in your heart determines what you say. A good person produces good things from the treasures of a good heart, and an evil person produces the evil things from the treasures of an evil heart. I tell you this, you must give an account on Judgment Day for every idle word you speak. The words you say will either acquit you or condemn you. I believe Greg Burleson was found guilty because he said words, whether he meant them or not. He said words that condemned himself. He spoke, he spoke from an abundance of his heart. And so whether or not at the time of the stand-up he truly wanted to see any of those agents or officers leave in body bags, whether he wanted that or not while he was at the stand-up, after the fact, that he even was able to speak those things, tells me that he already had evil stored up in his heart, because I have never heard anybody I've personally supported in this speak such evil words and want harm to come to somebody else just because of the title or job that they carry. So I think that Greg Burleson's words condemned him. I do not truly believe he is guilty of the charges that were brought forth. I do not believe he deserves spending the rest of his life in prison. I do not believe that I do not believe justice was served today. I think the courts failed us once again. The jury was not given the information that they needed to make a true verdict today. If they were given the information, they would have found all of these individuals not guilty. And then even the ones that they did find guilty will not get justice. Todd Engel was found guilty of felonies. He will lose his right to bear arms. He will lose his right to vote. He'll have to go back and try to get all of those back down the road. So at the end of the day, even if Todd Engel doesn't spend any more time in jail, if he is acquitted on all the other charges, he still was found guilty of a felony. He still has lost his rights. In my opinion, justice was not served today. So they're going to try to retry them on June 26th. As some of the other attorneys were saying, they do not know if that'll actually happen, if the time will get bumped out. As we know, Ammon, Cliven, Ryan, Bundy, Ryan Payne, and Pete Santilli's trial is supposed to start on the 26th. We don't know now if they will group these all together as one. I don't foresee them necessarily doing that, because that's a lot of defendants to have in one trial. They may just end up bumping out Cliven and Ammon and Ryan's trial. So either way, justice was not served today. If all of the witnesses had been able to be called, if the prosecution had not been able to lie and deceive the jury, if the judge had known what it means to actually be an impartial judge for this trial, and had she not acted like a schoolgirl, I don't know, chasing after the prosecution, which really, it seemed a lot of times like she was just, oh, buddy, I don't want you in this. Hang on, stand over here for just a minute, okay? I'm just going to finish this up real quick. Okay, let me get some food. Okay. It really seemed, for the most part, like she was just chasing after the attention of the prosecution and could have really cared less what the defense said or what was happening to these defendants. That's not a judge. A judge is supposed to be impartial. She's supposed to manage the courtroom and make sure that justice is served, and she didn't do that. So to Judge Navarro, shame on you. You failed us today. You failed the American people, and you received a ton of money doing it. Shame on you. Shame on you to the defense attorneys that really did not fight for the innocence of these men. Shame on you to the prosecution who care more about collecting a paycheck than you do about having justice served. All you really want is a guilty verdict, and you want these men in jail because of what it does for you financially. You really don't care about justice. If you did care about justice, you would have made sure that these men received a fair trial. So that's all. Hopefully we'll have more information. Yes, you can. Hopefully we'll have more information soon. I think that's all, and God bless you guys. Thanks everybody for watching. Get the message out. I don't know what else to say. Get the message out. Get on the phone with your elected officials. Show up. Show support. These people need support, and make some noise, right? Why are we being so darn quiet? You know, if you see a police officer today or a U.S. Marshal, go up and hand them a Constitution and ask them if they even understand what's in that. If they understand that their job is to protect us from an overreaching government. The Constitution doesn't give us our rights. It actually is like the confines that the government was placed into, 250 years ago, and they've left those confines, and now we're holding on to it saying, no, really, I have this right, I have this right. The Constitution wasn't to give us our rights. The Constitution was to put chains around the government and keep them from abusing the people, keep them from growing too big. And if you look at situations like Jeff Winehouse and Schaefer Cox and Skylar Barbeau, if you look at Joe Robertson, Baby Holmes, if you look at all the Bundys and the men that went to stand with them, if you look at Jason Patrick, Daryl Thorne, Dwayne Emmer, Jake Ryan, none of these people are receiving due process, and they are now being held in the chains of the government instead of the government being held within the chains of the Constitution. So we've definitely got some stuff to turn around, you guys, and I just hope that if nothing else comes of this right now, I hope that people start to realize that when you petition to take away the rights of other individuals, that you yourself have those rights taken away in the end. Don't do that. Fight for the rights of all, even the guilty. They still have rights in this country. They're still supposed to be protected against cruel and unusual punishment. There's all kinds of due process violations that go on in these jails, even from men who actually committed crimes. If you speak up for them, then if you ever find yourself in that position, you know you yourself will be guaranteed those rights and you won't be abused. So love your neighbors yourself, even when it's inconvenient. Thanks, guys.